Right.
Oh.
So instead of us doing a full recommendation back, I can place under my name under the city council, and you guys can come in and talk because we can do that. I can put under my name and we can have the list of recommendations based off of this meeting, or not, I hate using the word recommendations. The list of ideas about how we can make this process better for the public and for the HDC, and that we've asked the HDC to do X, Y, and Z, to look at, you know, whether or not there might be a way to have an exemption like other mechanicals. And is there, you know, can they come up with, I love the idea of the one sheets, you know, let's list out a few different ideas based off of everything we've written down, and we can present that and say, this is the direction we're going. So within 2 months, we've asked for them to report back to us with actual concrete principles and things that can happen that will improve the process. And then the planning board will take a look at that and then bring that back to council and get their feedback on that, make sure we're going in the right direction. Because we don't want to spend 4 months writing up new code that's just going to get stumped at city council. So
Exactly.
it's best that we actually try to get it,
That's why we wanted to have.
check-ins with them.
We want to have an interactive discussion with council, not just, you know, give council a chance to ask questions. So. Jane,
I like that. I just would like to add that I do feel that we need to answer whether this is under the purview of the HDC or not, because that's what's being presented to us. That's what's being asked for an overarching recommendation. So are we in agreement that actually the HDC,
Yes.
who should do
Yeah.
all of these things
Right.
recommended, but that we do agree that the HDC should be their purview to, however you want to say it, control the implementation of solar panels within the historic district.
yeah.
And like I said, so like one of their many, I mean, placement or replacement of roof mounted mechanical or electrical equipment and ventilation terminators, where the equipment is, you know, we could have one of those like that for the HDC. I bet they could come up with an exemption. So we're not totally saying no to city council. We're saying, we hear you want some things, you want it to be totally exempt. We're gonna compromise. Let's make it an exemption when it's totally unseen or it's shielded in some way. I don't know. I'm just spitballing sort of ideas, but let's let the HDC come up with whether or not there can be an exemption. Ask them that. And then 2, we really want to update the principles and how you communicate with the public. So that maybe there's a sheet about solar panels and update the guidelines in some way based off of all the things that we've talked about. So I think that's the request.
I agree. So I think we should keep it general about what we're saying. So first of all, we have to be clear that it is within the HDC purview, I think. And then we leave it in more general sense, like the HDC will develop criteria to update the design guidelines. The HDC will develop a one-page guidance for applicants for solar panels within the historic district. And this will also include exceptions. Like, we don't say what all the exceptions are. We let the HDC flush out those categories.
It's a concept presentation to council. It's exactly what you're saying. It's just saying here, we agreed to come to have this meeting, which we did. We have reached a consensus. We did. And here are some of the preliminary ideas that have come up in terms of concepts. They're not fleshed out yet, but some ideas that people seem to agree included the one sheet description, including having some details on admin approvals, including having some definite no's and other things that we talked about. I've got them written down and I'm sure Peter has them written down as well.
So what is our internal process for the planning board reviewing these recommendations that are going to be presented to city
The
council?
way it worked, if we get council feedback. So we'll get preliminary council feedback from what happened tonight. If council agrees with that process, the HDC will do its 2-month thing and come up with some ideas for recommendation. Those are proposed zoning amendments that I think will probably have an interim council discussion, again, a check-in with the council, comes back to planning board for public hearing. We do our thing, goes back to council for adoption.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm actually asking about what the summary, or whatever you want to call it, the conceptual summary that's going to be presented to city council, what does that read like? What does that look like? Do we get to review that so that it's really from the entire planning board?
It's what I tried to read off when they were still here.
So we're gonna do it from your notes, because I have notes too, other people have notes.
we're about
That's
to
what I
do-
want to understand is the actual conceptual presentation
Mhm.
that's going to be presented to city council. Who's going to do that? How does it become a full planning board?
This is the vote. The idea, and it's not a limiting conversation with council, it's to present the concepts. It's not to be totally specific about anything. It's to show that there's progress on this topic.
It's a report.
Mr. Chairman, for discussion purposes, and so we can get a formal vote on the table, I would move to recommend that the planning board develop an update that Councilor Moreau can give on behalf of the planning board at the March 4th city council meeting, to let them know of how this meeting transpired, and to let them know that we have a sense of what the HDC is going to work on over the next 2 months, and report back through the planning board to the council.
Second.
And just to be clear, if it's the March 4th meeting, that means I have to have it on the agenda by the
Next Wednesday.
28th, next Wednesday.
And that includes that we do believe that it is within the purview of the HDC, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, that, I don't want that to be lost. I think that is what we were,
It's fundamental,
okay.
fundamental. The only part about that motion, I don't know that we need it in writing necessarily, other than to have a place on the agenda. Because the way I mean, I'll read off what my notes are, and you can add to them if you wish, Jane, because I'm sure you have additional notes. The idea was to flesh out some of the definitions, including back of the house, address things like the side of the building and whether appurtenances are hanging off the sides of the building. And again, these are just preliminary ideas. These are not limiting and they're not fixed. They may choose different things to come back with, but this is what I heard. Accessory structures, deal with those differently. Have a list of no's that are definite no's, like nothing that obstructs important architectural features. Taking guidance from Charleston as an example, front of the house obstructions, those are definite no's. Permanent damage to the building, those are no's. A one page list of guidance for applicants. I'm going to leave windows off. They also mentioned, and I think this should be mentioned, that they feel it's important to retain some discretion because of the aesthetics. That's something that they feel is important, and I think the council should hear that. And ask legal about how an energy audit might be implemented into part of the review process. What did I miss?
The only thing I would add from my notes is, I put an admin approval versus possible exempt, and do we have both of those or do we have either one of those? I think that we have asking them to look at whether or not it's a possible to have an exemption, or do we start at admin approval?
So,
I think that ties into some of the stuff up above that I said, but thanks, Bill.
for content, are we envisioning the same standard applied across the entire historic district? Or are we thinking that we might get a different result in Strawberry
I didn't
Bank?
hear any buy-in on that suggestion when I made it. The only difference I heard was flat roofs.
I agree. That's all I heard too.
Mhm.
So we have a motion, a second. I think we have an understanding. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? We have consensus to report to the council.
And we have to do it by next Wednesday.
Mr. Chair, I think this was very useful having HDC and planning working together. I mean, that was pretty cool. We listened to their part of the world. They listened to our part of the world. And we knocked something out.
Well, we get to meet with city council tomorrow night.
That's his fight.
What's that?
Since we have 10 minutes and I'm not going to take them, I told
Okay.
Reagan, it was pointed out to me by the municipal association earlier today, there's a statute that actually allows joint meetings of land use boards. It could be the HTC and the planning board and the conservation commission. An applicant can request it. The boards can request it. So future reference, if there's something, I don't think we need it for run-of-the-mill stuff, but a complicated project, like there might be one downtown someday soon, that might be something to think about.
I know exactly.
Mr.
what
Chair,
you're thinking.
I'd also like to not, well, not announce, but there's not an RSA that allows these joint meetings, but there's RSAs that allow members to be on two committees at once.
Yes,
I think that's something would be extremely helpful.
yeah, and it's not allowed under Portsmouth City Code, and that's something that I think should be changed, because I think there should be some cross-pollination between land use boards. Anything else?
Thank you.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much.